Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, all right, ready?
Yeah.
All right, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. We are here at Sara Fulton and Ryan
Butler.
Ryan Butler's
Sara
house.
Fulton.
Yeah, with Brew Keepers.
Yes.
Sarah, do the introductions because you know their names better than I do.
Carolyn and Kevin Ayers and my brother Josh Fulton. All three of them make up the Brew Keepers that just celebrated their 1-year anniversary.
Yay!
Woo!
Yes. And 1-year anniversary of selling your first keg. Is that
correct?
Right?
Yeah, our licensing is a July to July licensing.
Okay.
So last year we worked really hard for the first part of the year, getting the building ready, building out the cooler. And once the licensing came through, obviously, you have to get clientele and stuff. But yeah, we sold our first keg to the Ye Old Alpha.
Nice.
And it was July 8th of last year, and here we are a year later with 15, 16 clients.
Give or take.
Mm-hmm.
Give or take.
I didn't realize you had that many clients.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're
wow.
in Wheeling, Morgantown, and Weirton.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of like
County.
3 or 4, but I didn't know that there was. That's incredible.
Yeah, and Wetzel County. Kevin corrected me. I forgot. We secured a new client down there here recently.
And because I know Sara, and through her telling me,
Mm-hmm.
you got 1-year anniversary of selling your first keg, but you've actually been making beer together for a lot longer.
Well,
than
we've
that.
together. Okay, so Kevin's been homebrewing for almost 20 years plus now.
Yeah, let's hear how this whole thing
Okay.
started.
That's it.
Let's start at the
We've
very
been with
beginning of
Josh
Brew
for
Keepers.
5 years now.
Yeah, it's been at least 5. Yeah.
So
For those of you who don't know, my brother Josh was a staple at the Alpha for years. He was the bartender
Yes.
for years and years and years.
And I remember when I first met Josh, I think, which was a couple of years ago, that the Brew Keepers was already kind of thing, and that there were talks of you guys starting the business,
Conceptually,
and that you really took your time to get everything.
we did.
You didn't just rush into it, which I think was really impressive. And every time I talked to Josh about it, which wasn't that often, but he was saying that we were waiting for this piece to fall in place, and you guys really seemed like you had a
Very strategic, very thoughtful,
Yeah.
and that's every decision we've made as a team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things that has helped us, back to your point, Sarah, from a background perspective, is Kevin was a reporting analyst for Bank of America for 15 years.
20.
Yeah. And so all the while he was a home brewer, and it was a huge hobby for him. But he understood the data and how to work it, and my experience as a project manager of organizing things and being thoughtful about things and understanding, what's in scope and what's out of scope of a project. I can't tell you how many times we've sat in the basement with our whiteboards, if you will, going through decision matrices and really being thoughtful about where do we want to go, what beer do we want to brew. I think, Josh, you've been phenomenal when it comes to the recipes. What can we do that's creative and unique, but also simple craft beer?
Right.
What can we do that will make us stand out? I think Scotchy Scotch. I think of you. That's immediately I think of you, which is our winter seasonal.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But I think so. You've got Kevin's history of home brewing, which you're happy to speak about, and you've got Josh's love for just learning, and he's constantly reading articles and
he has a phenomenal palate.
Yes.
He really does.
yes,
You guys really do have the 1-2 punch of a well thought out business plan and an incredible product.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a beer drinker. Sorry, everybody, I'm not. But the last time I was over here and you had Brew Keepers, I kept drinking it. I'm like, I have to drive home. I couldn't stop drinking it. It's absolutely my favorite beer in the world.
we will not put anything out that we would not drink ourselves.
Right.
We've literally thrown away gallons of beer down the drain because we're like, it's not up to par, it's not
Yeah.
right. Because, if it doesn't pass the Josh, Kevin, Carolyn test, it's not going to get sold to our customers.
Well, it seems like I would think when you're brewing beer, you have to go through the whole process and then wait until you open it so to know if it's good or not, and then doubt. It's not like making Kool-Aid where you can make a batch and figure it out in 3 or 4 days. It's
Well, you know early on. I mean, you make the first batch of beer, if the original gravity's off, if the flavor's off, if the color's off, you know right away. And then you go through the initial fermentation, and that's when we taste. That's the initial tasting. Does it taste funky? Does it have a weird aftertaste? Is we've brewed 200 batches now. On the large system that we've had for a year now, so we know what it should taste like coming out of that system. And we've been brewing together for 5 years now, so we know what the Irish Pirate should taste like. We know what the suspension should taste like. And, if something tastes funky to us, we'll have the other ones taste it like, hey, I just ate something, so maybe it's just my palate. Right. Can you try this and make sure? And there's always checks and double checks along the process. So yes and no. It's not until the end of the process. Okay. There's checks throughout the process. Yeah.
And now, if you get a batch that when you taste it, it's kind of funky, is there a way to repair it, or do you kind of have to just chuck it and start over?
You got to just scrap it and do it again.
Yeah.
And that's good that you guys take the time to taste it and you scrap it if it's
absolutely.
no good, and to keep the quality up. And sounds like I don't know much about brewing beer, but I was talking to Josh before how I've been making my own kombucha and these different flavors and adding ginger. And some of them I have to dump down the drain. And I was saying how I had one that was carbonated so much when I took the cap off, literally the whole bottle went up to the ceiling. There was maybe like a half an inch of kombucha in the bottom. Yeah. And
we've had those.
Bottle bombs.
Dialing it in. But so it's an art and a science.
Absolutely.
Like, and sounds like a lot of fun.
So how did you guys, make the decision to go from home brewers to having your own business? And two, why? Why did you?
I think we need to tell the story. Josh, tell the story of how we met.
Okay. I met Kevin and Carolyn through a mutual friend of ours, Chef Derek Roth. Mm-hmm. And just, they were bar patrons that I like talking to, and apparently they like talking to me too. So we just kept talking, and it came up. I don't even know how it came up that you brewed your own beer. So of course I was interested. Kevin invited me up for a brew, and I remember going up there. We started it. It was like 8 or something like that at night. I didn't go home till like it was almost 3 a.m, because I didn't know how long the brewing process took at the time. He showed me how to make a dry Irish stout. Pretty much, I really couldn't help out or anything like that. Just watch the process go. But I was instantly hooked. I've always loved alcohol.
Who doesn't?
Right. And intrigued on how it was made. Like I knew more about distilling than brewing beer at the time, but because I primarily dealt with distilled spirits. But like I said, I was hooked right off the bat, and I wasn't too much of a beer drinker at the time because I just really couldn't find too many beers I liked.
Yeah.
And having Kevin show me the ropes, basically, and after that first beer, I was just like, hey, can we do this more often? And I wanted to make my own beer and learn how to do that kind of thing, and it kind of escalated from there. But after we had a few brews under our belt, and Kevin was designing his own beers. We did kits at first, but Kevin really went out and started. He went for the IPA that we have Flip Flop, and I remember tasting it, and I was like, it's good. And I told him I would change just a couple things about it, and he actually listened to me, which was amazing.
Yeah. Like somebody listened to you?
Right. Exactly,
or just me?
Anybody, And he made those really minute changes, and it ended up being a fantastic beer.
It really flip-flop. Yeah. I don't like IPA. I never have. I've tried so many IPAs and so many different brands, and I've never, ever liked an IPA. But dang it, if Flip Flop isn't one of the best beers, let alone IPAs I've ever had.
After that, we we just started
Yeah,
collaborating.
it snowballed.
Josh lived in my basement for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
At least, yeah.
I
I
know
mean,
that feeling, Carolyn.
I was gonna say, I think there was every waking moment that he wasn't at the Alpha. I think
was
he
at our
ended up
house.
spending at our house.
Yeah.
pretty much.
But that goes back to the dynamic of how we sort of got started. Was like I said, like Carolyn said, I started brewing about 20 years ago, and then I took a hiatus for about 6 or 8 years, and then I needed a new hobby. And so I picked up some homebrew equipment that I had at my dad's, and I did, a batch or two. And literally, it was right then when Josh got a hold of, or we got a hold of Josh, at the bar, and we just, like he just explained, it snowballed really fast. But it was because of my brewing experience, I think, and my ability to be able to design recipes and get them close from the get-go.
Absolutely.
And then
Josh
that's
gets them over
that's
there.
where Josh's palate comes in, and it's so incredibly important because in almost every recipe he's like, we need to make this change, and it's not like, hey, I think we should make this change. It's we need to make this change, and we make it, and it works every time. So the dynamic of of her business sense, my past experience, my brewing abilities, and then his palate, his knowledge, and everything, like Carolyn explained, with reading stuff and understanding how things should be. It's a crazy dynamic that we have.
So we spent a couple of years doing that, home brewing, and we always played with the idea of opening a business. Kevin worked corporate America. He was very good at his job, but he didn't love his job. There wasn't the passion there as there was with brewing.
I hated my
He hated his job. He had great benefits, good pay. He could work from home, but fundamentally what he did, he hated. And so 3 years ago, actually, in September of this year, he got...
before.
No, it's 3, honey.
It was 2013.
Honey. Anyways,
You're so cute.
it was
So cute.
it was right after I started with my new company. It was 3 months after that, which was 3 years ago.
He's got the look of a man.
I'm happy to have this argument offline. Thank you, podcast world.
Within the last
Anyways,
5 years.
So within the last couple of years, so Kevin got laid off from his job, downsizing. He actually worked for the mortgage servicing arm of the company he worked for, which was going through a lot of kind of redos. Anyway, so we decided right then, I think one of the ways he told me he got laid off was, hey, I guess we're opening a brewery. So we buckled down for, gosh, a good 6 to 9 months building the business plan. Every aspect of it. Marketing, operations, thinking through a sales aspect, like what did we want to be? And why did we want to be that way? And my Pew matrices.
Pew matrix after Pew matrix after Pew matrix.
For people that don't know what that is, like
Yes.
myself, what is it?
So it's a decision matrix. So you define your criteria and says, okay, so if I'm buying a car, I have to have 4-door.
Yeah.
I have to have a hatchback. And so you then prioritize within those to say this is the most important feature or aspect of it. And then you look at your options. Okay, I'm going to look at a Honda CR-V. I'm going to look at a Subaru Forester. And then you rank them. And what it does is it forces you to make a calculated decision that's not from the heart.
Yeah.
So based on the fact that we needed a building and this much space and X criteria, here were our options from a real estate perspective. And then as a group, we were able to then make mutually agreed decisions that weren't emotional, that weren't, well, I really love that building, but it met this specific criteria because it scored the highest, frankly. And so that was one of
an unbiased decision.
Exactly. That was best for the business, and that's where, at the beginning when we were talking, you said, we've been very thoughtful, is, we've pulled different tools in from our business experience, that has helped us make these unbiased decisions that have been very good for us.
I think that's great. The idea that you took a really scientific approach to how to start a business.
Because it's not easy. Like, I think a lot of people, They have a really good product. They're extremely passionate about what they do. So you have like passion and excitement, and then they're like, oh my God, I'm going to make a business. I'm going to start a business.
Right.
And there's a lot more that goes into it than this tastes really good. Yeah. I could sell this to people.
Well, and we knew we had a great product, and that's one of the things between Kevin and Josh that's been phenomenal is Kevin does have the phenomenal brewing experience, and he knows how to create a recipe from nothing. Like, I want to create a honey brown, and thinking through that and building that recipe, and then Josh really helps kind of finesse it and take it over the finish line. But it's not just about the beer. It's like, thinking from a business perspective and approaching it from a, what's the best way to do this? And I always joke, one day we're gonna write a memoir, brewery on a budget,
right?
Because it was just us. It was the three of us figuring it out, and Josh spent hours painting that room.
Every wall in that place, actually,
2 coats.
2 coats.
Just the patience to say, all right, we want to start a business. Now we're going to wait until we have everything ready and all the steps and stuff. That building, I like that building. Let's move in there. And then you realize the rent or whatever is too high, and this isn't.
There's a lot of factors that go into it.
Yeah.
A lot of factors that go into it.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs put their cart before the horse, so to speak. Yeah. Like you were talking about passion and stuff like that. People, they're real passionate, real excited about it, but they don't exactly understand what goes into it, or they really try to, push the business without really knowing how to put it up, stand it up. Right.
Yeah, passion and talent don't always equal your own
success.
It's success. Yeah,
there needs to be some kind of guidance there.
Yeah.
And West Virginia law isn't that easy either.
No.
Like, I know you guys, a lot of breweries have ran into that problem with West Virginia law.
If we had literally licensed over the river in Ohio, it would have made our lives a lot easier.
Yeah, but you guys are blowing up all over West Virginia.
Well, in our little corner of West Virginia, I would say.
That's how it starts, right? A little bit at a time. Just in a year, though, how many locations was that again that you were in?
Yeah, so tell us all the places here in Wheeling where you guys...
You're testing us off the top of our head.
I used to have it like an ABC thing where I could rattle it off really fast, but...
Alpha. Let's start with A.
Yeah, that was it.
The Alpha.
B, Bubba's. No, I can't do it like that. Alpha, Generations, Market Vines, River City, Bubba's Burgers, Undo's in the Grove, Down on Main, Talkaholics, Vagabond Kitchen, the Warsaw in Glendale. There's 3 places in Morgantown. 2 are sort of they're sort of rotational. So, like, we may not be on tap right now, but we may be back on tap in the future because they kind of rotate through different things and different seasons and what they have on tap. But that would be the Iron Horse and Tin 202. We're also in Beertopia in Morgantown. Basil's in Weirton. I think that's it.
That's it.
That's pretty awesome.
If I missed one, I apologize.
Yeah, we apologize if we missed one.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
They're all extremely important to us, and we try to...
Great support.
Oh, the glassworks. We probably glassworks.
That's the other one. Yeah, I always forget that one.
Yeah. Well, I know it's exciting for me because obviously, Josh being my brother, and meeting Kevin and Carolyn, I've kind of been in it since the beginning. But now, when I say Brew Keepers, people are like, "Oh, yeah, Brew Keepers." Yeah. I love the Irish Pirate. I love the Red. I love the Flip Flop. Like, now people know the name, and they can rattle off what they like, and that fills me with pride.
Yeah.
Well, we spent years building a brand, doing like
for
OI events and Brew the Zoo and stuff like that, giving away as much beer as we possibly
literally giving away gallons of beer just one for twofold. One, to get our name out there, but also like feedback. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Like, I think 2 years we spent
at least
going to
sure
local...
wasn't 3.
Wow. Okay, 2 to 3 years.
I can't need
Or was
to
it
turn
for?
off these mics.
It's gonna be a fun car ride home.
But no, absolutely.
It's all in love, really, really, truly is.
Totally. I love you, honey.
Yeah, I know. I'm just old.
But no, Josh, you're absolutely right, and I always forget about that. It was we didn't come to market and nobody knew who we were.
Yeah.
We built a guerrilla following.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about the zoo brew we did when we were home brewers, and how many opening bottle after bottle after bottle of beer, and people just loving it, and going to as many homebrew fundraisers or whatever we get at the Stifle events, that sort of thing.
And shout out to Wheeling Aylers too.
Yeah.
Shout out to all y'all.
Wheeling Aylers, local homebrew club, you guys rock.
And if you guys are hearing this podcast and you want to come on talk about Wheeling Aylers,
give us a holla.
Holla! Okay, again,
But yeah, absolutely. It was building that original base, and then even what I love now is, especially in holiday weekends, probably because I just worked the last one, which was July 4th, is the locals who know us. So what you were just saying, Sarah, where people are like, Brew Keepers, I know them, I love them. And then it's, oh, my cousin's in town. My parents are in town.
Right.
My brother and sister's in town. So then we get flooded. And the shop, we have like 10 people. And we're like, okay, like, how can I help you? You. But it's great because it gets them, and then they get excited about it. They're like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. I want crowlers. I'm going to take crowlers to go, which are the 32-ounce cans, which are nice because then it's like, oh, I'm from Baltimore, so I can take 3 of those home to my family, and they can try something that's locally crafted beer in Wheeling, West Virginia, which is where I'm from, but at the same time, share it with their friends and family, wherever they're from.
And now it seems like people are taking it with them on like vacation, or if they're going to visit, like she was saying, going to visit other people. So it's traveling. I mean, we've even got. We received a photo from a T-shirt that ended up being in South Korea.
wow.
Yeah, we did.
So yeah, I mean, it's funny being this small and in this small a place and not really outreaching our clientele that far, but it's spidering out on its own. So it's kind of
and that's the, I would say, advantage or benefit that Brew Keepers has, being a distribution
Self-distribution.
brewery. Yes, instead of a tap room. Could you talk about kind of the difference and why it's working so best for you?
Well, we kind
Good,
of want to.
best.
Yeah.
We'd love to open a tap room. I mean, we're selling growlers and crowlers out the door because we can, because our license allows that. It's like an added little bonus to our self distribution part. Like I said, we'd love to expand. I mean, we definitely have plans on expanding, but we've just been doing what we can with what we have.
Right.
But our original business model was we knew we were going to go into the market longer term, 2-3 years. We knew we wanted to open a tap room, but we were going into the market specifically to distribute and sell to bars and restaurants. And so what was great was within a year or so before we opened, West Virginia passed a law that allowed for self-distribution. And what that means is, to your question, is we don't have to go through a middleman. So we don't have to sell the kegs to a middleman who will then sell it to a restaurant. Instead, so because we're still so small, we are able to sell directly to restaurants and build those relationships. And I think that's one of the things that is unique about us is for all of our locations, we have strong relationships. We have amazing customer service. Something goes wrong, call us, we're there. We're happy to help. And I think that's one of the things like Kevin and Josh have really built is it's not just about the beer, but if you're having trouble pouring it, call us. We'll help you figure out your system. If, I know one of our clients right now, it's, hey, we'll help you move the kegs around because that's something that you're not able to do right now. It's just thinking through, how best from not only do we have an amazing product, but how can we service you as a client? And West Virginia allowing us, because we are so small, to self-distribute allows us to cut the middleman and sell directly to...
And you can go to the people instead of the people coming to you, which is just good business.
Because I imagine it from a stability standpoint, selling it by the keg versus by the glass, the pints, it's got to be a much more reliable business model.
It is to a certain extent. I have to be reliant on the restaurant is going to sell my beer.
That's
You
the
know,
point.
and they're going to talk positively about our beer. But at the same point, you know, it's about their confidence in us and their willingness to say, you know what, those guys make damn good beer.
Yeah.
And by the way, we also really just like working with them.
Yeah.
So we're just going to keep ordering from them. And oh, hey, they brought a new seasonal out. Absolutely, I'm going to get that keg or the next 2 kegs from them.
I will say this about a lot of our customers, not all, but a lot. Everybody who tried to sell our beer, like just one flavor, everybody has at least 2, 3 or more flavors.
They
now.
became fans.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
We have, you know, we kind of prove that we have staying power, and like you said, a great product. You know, so people that drink our beer, enjoy our beer, thank God.
Yeah.
And,
This is the best damn beer in Wheeling.
and I think that because, you know, it's becoming more like a point of local pride too.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's why our
it started
beer makes it.
local.
Yeah, our beer makes it to other states because people are like, oh, my hometown does this, and I want to show people that it does that, you know, and
That's a great point, Josh.
and that's a great feeling too.
All right, so let's talk. This is my favorite part. Let's talk about the flavors. What
That's all you guys.
what are all the beers that you guys have in the fridge right now at the brewery?
Right now?
Yeah, that everybody can go get.
Okay, we have 10 flavors right now. We have the Yield Ale. That you can get directly from us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you can go get the crowlers or the growlers.
Right. You got the Yield Ale, which is like a German-American wheat sort of hybrid beer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a wheat beer, but it has wheat elements in it, you know? The Yield Alpha serves it with an orange, which you can if you want. If not, that's fine too.
And that's kind of like an easy drinking beer.
Sure.
Super easy.
Yeah.
It's probably our lightest drinking beer
Mm-hmm.
that we have.
Like if you are a Bud Light or a Miller
yeah.
Lite, God forbid, and you wanted to switch to good beer, and that would be a good transition. That's a good drinking.
Yeah, we designed that beer specifically for
It's
the pop,
marketability.
like the
Yes.
those Miller Lite, Coors
Yeah.
Light drinking, Bud Light drinking crowd that you're mentioning. Specifically tailored. So if you want to branch into the craft beer market, it's a perfect introductory beer.
That and the suspension too.
The cream ale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We that was supposed to be like our flagship, you know, introductory to craft beer.
Yeah.
You know?
It was.
But well, I think it took on more of its own personality as we kind of
It's very malty. It's got a
messed
nice
with the
body
recipe,
to
I
it.
should say. Yeah.
The Prohibition cream ale?
Right.
Pre-prohibition.
Pre-Prohibition.
So
Which
that-
means it has corn in it.
Right.
Right. And I mean that's a nice, really hot weather, refreshing beer too. The Yield Ale. We made it strictly for its marketability. That's because that's what our client wanted, a beer to market to everyone,
Right.
or everyone can drink it. So that's why that one came up. You know. So now we're at the other one. Like I said, the suspension. It's a great, like warm, like a lawnmower beer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
On a hot day like today.
Yeah, really crisp, really refreshing kind of beer too. A little bit of sweetness. And that's a heavy favorite for a lot of places and a lot of people. And for our third one, Topper, I'm gonna let Kevin describe Topper Gold.
Yeah, so actually Topper started as a beer. It started out as a beer recipe that we actually have in our repertoire, but I sort of dialed it back and switched it on Josh because it was one of the beers he designed, and eventually we're going to bring it out. It's called the Honey Crema Hefeblonde. It's like it's like 4 or 5 beers kind of mixed together as far as styles, and but we're going to bring it out eventually. We'll probably do it as more of a rotational thing. It'll be fun to bring out because I think people have had it in the past as when we were home brewers and we did things. Yeah, it'll be fun to do a batch of that and just roll it out like one time.
Yeah,
like throw it back in the vault for a while. But anyway, so it started
like
out
the McRib where they bring it back and then people want it.
Exactly.
So when you bring it back out there, yeah, that's
exactly. So anyway, it started out being that beer, and then I sort of really dialed it back and simplified it as much as I possibly could. And we talked about, the two earlier beers, the Yield Ale and the Suspension, being sort of the gateway beers into craft beer, but they really weren't. They were really just craft beers that were extremely marketable.
Yeah.
So the gateway beer to actual craft beer, or like getting into the hoppy types of beers and stuff, became the Topper Gold. It's an American take on a British Golden Ale, and they are typically hoppier than your lighter ales, and then not as hoppy as a pale ale. But really, it doesn't give you a whole lot of hop notes as far as your nose and your flavor. It just gives you the almost like a dry finish on the back end. But predominantly, it's one of those beers that it looks like beer, it acts like beer, it tastes like beer.
Right.
It's really clear in a glass, and we have, and it's funny, just like even the first two, we've got followers, and Topper Gold is definitely one of those beers that. We've got diehards that they want it every time. We actually had a guy that came in and was almost buying it daily because he loved it so much. But yeah, Topper Gold's a good, definitely a good drink.
And then the red is the red.
Yeah, so I guess
my favorite.
Yeah, the red. The red has an amazing story.
The red.
Yeah, so
Tragic
it is a tragic tale. It's a tragic tale of a beer that I couldn't get right as a home brewer. As I first got into beer, which was actually really late in my life, when I first started getting into beer, I immediately went to craft beer, which was a good thing. But on the flip side, I always wanted to do a red, and I couldn't get it right. I think I came close on the very, very, very first recipe. As home brewers, we brewed that beer 18 times.
Wow.
It was not. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Again, back to the if we wouldn't drink it, we wouldn't sell it.
Yeah.
It just wasn't right.
I think I threw it out. Yeah, we gave up on it. We called it the Brett Favre beer for the longest time because it kept coming back to haunt us. But I still liked it. So that's why I called it the Brett Favre beer. I still like Brett Favre, but he kept coming back. I think I threw that beer out of 18 times. I think I threw it out 15, and it just was never the beer I wanted. And on the flip side, there's another beer that we did at home that we've brewed 3 times at a commercial setting. We can't get it right, so it's been the opposite situation with that beer. So anyway, what happened was I said, you know what, I'm going to brew this beer. And I thought, I'm going to take a completely different approach on how this beer is supposed to be brewed. And the very first time we brewed it, it was perfect.
Spot on.
It was spot on. And we did make the minor tweaks, and it was so funny because Josh, I think, threatened my life that day. And he says, if you dare change this beer, I'm done. But it was the smallest tweak, and it was literally just a malt change that actually made it better.
Yeah.
So
thank God for it.
Yeah, it wasn't truly a recipe
a
change
beer.
like a recipe amount of or anything. It was just literally a malt change. Like, hey, this is readily available, and how cool would it be if we just use this instead of this? But it ended up making the beer better, which was we use Irish malt that's brought over from Ireland in that beer. So
that's why it's called
the Aaron Jerg or Aaron Jerg. It's a hard J, but it's spelled with DEARG. So it's Gaelic for Irish red, and so that seems to be a huge crowd favorite, nice and malty.
Because it's awesome.
It is awesome.
Because it is awesome. And then you have 3 dark beers.
Correct.
2.
We have the
2?
honey brown. Are you concerned?
Honey brown,
yeah.
Which I just tasted, and I was like, to the honey brown, I was like, I don't know, honey brown, I don't know. And then I tasted it, and I'm like, damn it, they did it again. I was like, it was
dark
so
beer,
good.
that's where my heart was.
Yeah. Well, and so Josh, again, on a threatening of my life perspective, I wanted to dial back and into that whole realm of marketability, and I was going to do an American amber. Which made really no sense to make an American amber if we had a red beer. But I wanted to make, because we have that whole, hey, do you have anything like Yingling perspective? And I'm like, no, how about drinking craft beer?
Yeah. We have good beer.
Yeah, so
I think it's wise though that you guys bridge the gap.
Yeah.
To get people in, because I think
Well, it's not a far gap. It's really changing your taste buds.
Well, it's
to
really
wanting
just getting
something better.
Yeah, that and getting just people to try it.
Right.
That's the thing. Is a lot of people just won't try it because they've had such bad experiences. So why not have a good experience? And if they do, then
and I know the Irish Pirate Stout is a huge fan favorite.
Yeah.
And that goes way back. That's one of the beginning beers, right?
It's one of the original 6-pack.
Yeah. Real quick on the Honey Brown. So it was the interesting thing about that one was that I wanted to make this American Amber, and he's like, "No, don't do it, just don't. It's the dumbest move we could ever make." And I'm like, "Okay," but I says we just need that middle of the road because we have too lighter, too hoppy, too dark, but we didn't have that second middle of the road like the Irish Red. So I randomly came out of the office. It was kind of barreling out of the office. I'm like, "I got an idea," and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Why don't we do the Honey Brown?" And because we had done that beer in the past and people loved it. And he's like, "Yes, that's what we're doing." I'm like, "Okay." so that's how and we wanted to make an American brown since the red became an Irish beer. Mm-hmm. So so we wanted that American sort of middle of the road beer that people could drink that wasn't hoppy or dark. So we made the Honey Brown, and it is amazing. That beer is so delicious.
It really is.
Everybody loves it.
Right. So the Irish Pirate was one of the original ones. It started out my first beer that actually Josh was involved in was a beer that we did for a first homebrew event, and that was an Irish stout. And then we did a beer sort of outside of that, and I can't even remember what it was.
It was a black ale.
Yeah, it was a black ale or something. So
Black Island Ale.
That's it. So we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this like really cool style? The unique part about the Irish Pirate is we had to classify it as a foreign extra stout until the BJCP, which is the judging guidelines across the world, they changed here in 2015 and created an Irish extra stout category. And that's ironic because that's exactly what we brewed. That beer has all kinds of cool personality. And
coffee, molasses, toffee,
chocolate,
bitter, depending on your natural flavor profile. So I'm naturally a salty person, so I tend to get more of
You're salty?
A little bit.
Okay.
I tend to get more of the coffee notes out of it. But people who are natural sweet tooths tend to get more of the molasses and toffee out of it.
Yeah, I get coffee
that
out of it.
Beer, it tastes different. That one alone, for whatever reason, depending on your natural palate, is a unique experience for each person who drinks it.
It really is. It is, and it's great for making sauces too.
It is too.
It makes a damn good barbecue.
Yeah, you can use that to glaze just about anything. I think we've even had people take our stouts and put them over ice cream. We've the popcorn located in Wheeling. If you've not tried, he actually used the Irish Pirate in popcorn, making his caramel sauce for his popcorn. So.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool. It's pretty interesting.
So the last one we have though is the porter.
The
Heritage Porter.
Yeah.
And that's been a staple for us as well.
Well, in a way, a version of it has been.
Yes.
It originally was an Irish whiskey infused oak aged beer, it, as homebrewers, it was, I wouldn't say relatively inexpensive to make, but it wasn't it wasn't outrageous. It
was the Irish whiskey.
Right. It was the Irish whiskey. It was just it was a very kind of niche beer that. People who drank it loved it, but when we opened as a brewery, we wanted to get our porter base, right. We wanted to get that right before we did anything to it. And the thing is that just the porter ended up being so good, we just ran with it. Of course, we'll probably make the whiskey infused version of it sooner rather than later, but. For right now, we're just leaving it as a robust porter. And,
are you guys gonna revisit the Highlander Grog Stout?
Yes.
Are you?
Yeah. So that's very interesting. So basically, our business model right now, we have 8 staple beers that we will do constantly, and that is the yield, suspension, topper gold for your lighter offerings. branching into the Deathwind, which we haven't talked about. It has a great story.
Oh, that's right.
So the Deathwind and the Flip Flop, which are hoppy, the Irish Red, the Porter, the Heritage Porter, and the Irish Pirate. After that, we hope to have a seasonal beer. So as you get into each season, you kind of expect things like something lighter for the summer. So right now we have the Citri Session Pale Ale, which is a really, really light but really hoppy beer. It's a great drink. In the fall, we'll end up having the Oktoberfest again. We did an Oktoberfest last year. It went gangbusters. So we're going to do the Oktoberfest. We're bringing back Scotchy Scotch for the holidays.
Yes.
But we really don't have that spring beer. We didn't do one because we were working on so many other things that we really didn't do spring beer. So I assume we'll come up with one. And then we have the 10th tap. And instead of being called a seasonal, we're calling it a rotational. So it's whatever the hell we want to kind of work up that day. And back on the board in the office, we actually have some beers written down that we want to do. And the Highlander Grog Coffee Stout is on the board. It is probably even going to take shape this week or next week.
Yes.
And I think the idea, Brewfest last year, we won the People's Choice Award. And we've done several festivals since then. And as you know me, if you don't know me, I can't sit still. I can't leave the shit alone. It's just the way it is. So I think this year at Brewfest, we are actually bringing in 3 new beers.
Yes. Which is August 19th.
Yeah, the Brewfest is August 19th. Come hang out with us. We are destined to take the People's Choice Award again. That's our goal.
Yes.
That's right.
But I didn't want to be stagnant with some of the beers we've already done. So we're hoping to go in with 3 beers that will just literally be rotational beers, probably temporary, with the idea of possibly either making one of them the spring seasonal, or just something that we're going to continue to be on a rotational tap. Like, for example, like if we do the Highlander Coffee Stout and it works out well, if we need another rotational beer come December to kind of go along with the Scotchy Scotch, we'll bring it out again, and we'll just kind of throw that in the back pocket. And as we can bring it out, we'll bring it out. And we think we'll keep the demand high that way. So yeah, the coffee stout's coming back.
Good. I love Highlander Grog.
Yeah.
So there are 2 more that
Yeah. So the
Deathwind.
the Flip Flop IPA.
the flip. Where did they get the name from?
So
That's a great name.
yeah. So we were former cyclists, and we got married. Our engagement picture was on a bike, which has a fixie bike has a flip flop hub a lot of times. Plus, we had flip flops on when we had our engagement picture, so it just kind of snowballed and it just became the Flip Flop IPA. It really didn't have that great of a story.
Well, you also, because when we originally brewed it towed the line of a pale ale versus an IPA.
Yeah, so it sort of is a pale ale. It's sort of a pale. Well, yeah, pale ales and IPAs as their judge. The judging categories kind of overlap. So it's one of those that drinks like a pale ale, but it's actually an IPA or vice versa.
So it could flip flop between both categories.
That's probably why I like it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's probably why I like it.
Yeah, it's one of the
IPA.
most approachable IPAs I think anybody will ever drink. And people
It's
are
a
like,
great introduction to IPA.
agreed.
Absolutely.
I had that situation yesterday with a customer. They came in and they're like, we're not typically hoppy, and I'm like, okay. Then he wanted to try the Deathwind, which I thought was insane if he was not a hoppy person, because you have a huge hop profile with the Deathwind, even though it's a pale ale, and it's meant to be that way. But then he tried Flip Flop and he's like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" Because I couldn't believe that I changed his mind. So that was
It
kind of
also
cool.
has a high alcohol content.
Well, yeah.
7%, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Ryan Butler found that out.
Exactly. I think a lot of people do.
Chef Ryan Butler.
Chef, right?
He's Mr. in this house.
But I think the beer that we kind of left out was the Deathwind Pale Ale.
Great name.
My favorite.
Yeah, it is Carolyn's favorite. So the Deathwind Pale Ale, the story goes like this. Louis Wetzel, who everybody in this area is familiar with as a pioneer, frontiersman.
County owner.
Yeah, he obviously was noted for obviously doing a little bit of, as I like to call it, Indian sniping or hunting, or he was always seemed to be in conflicts with Indians. But they always thought it was kind of cool if they could, after he shot his weapon, well, he only had one shot, so they could go after him. So if they started hunting him in return in numbers, if one guy got shot, then they had more numbers there to go after him. But what they didn't know was Louis Wetzel was a very tall and quick man, so he learned to be able to load his rifle on a dead sprint. He was one of the very few men, if they're not the only guy, that was able to do that at that time. So the Indians nicknamed him Deathwind because he would fire his rifle, turn around and take off running. So they're like, okay, now we can go after him. So they would go taking off after him, and what they didn't know is he would turn around and fire again.
Wow.
And they didn't know how or why, or how he could do that. So they dubbed him the nickname Deathwind. So the best part about that story was we walked into the Iron Horse in Morgantown, and that was one of the beers that they had requested to put on tap immediately. We walked in, and the bartender's like, Deathwind, I love it. He was one of my favorite frontiersmen. So that the bartender knew right away. He knew the whole story. So that was kind of cool to have somebody that knew that story right away. I didn't know it. Actually, Josh brought it up to me. He did all the research on that one, and he came up with that name. So.
All your beers have great names, so I think that's great that you've taken the time to research them, and they have
they're very thoughtful.
There's
a reason behind each name.
And everything that you do.
And
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very
and from a
deliberate.
business perspective, or at least from mine, I always question everything.
Yeah.
Don't say anything. Carolyn.
Was it 3 or 4? I can't.
Yeah, I question everything. So you look at the naming perspective, and I'll throw a name out there, and I'll be like, this is dumb, or this isn't gonna fly, or whatever. But then I hear everybody else talking about it and how smart the naming conventions have been, and I was like, maybe they are pretty good. So
And it's an important part of it. Right?
it is.
Oh, it's your branding.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
each beer, Arender.
It represents
like just
you.
the name Arender is like Irish Red.
Yeah.
Like great beer. Like it immediately
It almost give you a sense of the
draws.
flavor, right?
Yes.
When you,
Yes.
you hear it, you know what it
Right.
tastes like just from the.
You
You
know,
should have an impression of
people who've gone to the Alpha and they come in, they're like, I had your beer, the Yield Ale. Yep, know exactly which one you're talking about. They're like, yeah, that one. So it's that name recognition. It's totally, and that's where hopefully our business backgrounds come into play from a marketing perspective. And frankly, Josh has been fantastic in helping think through some of the names as well.
Yeah, I would give him probably 85, if not 90% of the credit for not only the idea of what beer we're going to brew. I executed it first. Yeah, his conceptions of not only the beer we're going to brew, but then the naming conventions are usually him. And then I come up with it, brew it, and then get back to him and go, is this what you're looking for? So that's sort of how they came about. The Wild and Wonderful Honey Brown, that just came up quick. It was just kind of like, Wild and Wonderful Honey Brown, because the Wild and Wonderful sort of theme is still there with West Virginia, but it's sort of starting to take a back seat, and I thought, that's kind of easy.
And a nice ring to it.
Yeah, so I threw it out there.
As much as we can, we want to use locally sourced honey as well, right? So it's a locally grown beer with locally sourced honey, as much as we can get, So it just makes sense, Why not? It's West Virginia. Put your stamp on it, own it.
So what do you guys have going on this summer?
A lot of festivals.
Yeah.
Well, I think we only have one.
We just hit our break. We were on. It was like every weekend we had something going on. So we have a couple of weeks break now. We're really looking forward to the beer festival on the 19th.
Mm-hmm. Mountaineer Brew Fest.
Yeah, the Mountaineer Brew Fest.
Then we have the first Friday in August, which is August 4th.
August 4th, we've got First Friday in Center Market, which we're super excited because they're going to have a great band there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess leading up, in order, we have the Vagabond Kitchen is actually going to be doing some tap takeovers with several of the breweries who are going to be going to Brewfest. So I think we're doing a tap takeover there, and then we lead into the first Friday. Yeah, correct. Mm-hmm. And then we have Mountaineer Brew Fest on the 19th, and that's sort of our tap
end of season festival, of festival season event.
Yeah.
Which last year I poured for you guys, and I'll be pouring there again. So give me a shout out, give me a holla if you go. It was awesome. I stood in one place for 10 hours?
And
it
all you got
20
was adoration. I love your beer. Your beer is
Right.
amazing. We love you.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Give me all 4 of your tickets. But it was awesome. Our line never stopped. I don't think we ever looked up at all until they asked to get your guys' tickets, and it was clear right then and there that you won People's Choice, which to me means you win the whole thing. So I'm so excited for this year, especially all the goodness that has been going on for a whole entire year.
We were babies last year.
Yeah.
We'd only been open for
a month.
4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks when we went, and we won People's Choice.
4
So
weeks
now,
by a landslide.
That's right. Yeah.
By a landslide.
Yeah. Now we're ready to go back and own it. I mean, it's our hometown. We've got an amazing following. People who, I mean, we have so many regulars. It's like, oh, it's Friday. So and so is going to be coming in today. You know, like we know them. You know.
And it's and to be honest, I mean, there's some new breweries that are coming into the Brew Fest this year, so it's not going to be easy. But our goal is to.
I'm glad there's going to be.
There's going to be some better competition, you know, and you know, to bring in, because they're going to have more. You know, I mean, the competition's great, but they're going to have more, and it's going to make it more difficult to repeat as People's Choice. But we truly feel like we have the best product out there. And you know, and it's hometown, so you got to take pride in that. And,
it started local. You're keeping it local,
right?
And it's the best damn beer in Wheeling.
Well, it's one that's you know, we go back to the very beginning of this conversation. Is our business model is good beer. Like that's what we do. Simple craft beer. Like
there's really no getting around good beer.
Be straightforward in your recipes. No adjuncts, no crazy chemicals, no, like we don't add anything into our beer that's not natural. And stick to standard basic recipes. I want a stout. I want an IPA. I don't, you know, and that's...
I mean, for God's sakes, Kevin has it tattooed on his arm.
He literally has a tattoo on his arm.
From elbow
so it's water, barley, hops, and yeast. So
that's
just
awesome.
the Reinheitsgebot law from Europe, but it's keep it simple, keep it straightforward, and that's my thing. Like beer, food, like go back to the natural. Like keep it basic. Like don't give me the crazy adjuncts or crazy chemicals or everything. And that's why I firmly believe we have an amazing product.
Right. Well, it goes back to, just reminded me when we did the podcast with Ezra, and one thing that we kept going to, a good song is a good song.
Right.
And a good beer is a good beer.
Right.
Make it right, use the right ingredients, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, don't try to jazz it up, but just make a damn good beer. And that's where we've talked about the tap room. And the tap room concept for us is we make damn good beer.
Right.
I don't own a restaurant. I'm not a chef. So if we open a tap room, ideally, it would be a BYOF. Bring your own food. Bring your
I want to live in a world
whatever.
that Brew Keepers has a tap room. I just want to live in
Me too.
Well, I think the one thing that shines through that maybe you guys don't notice, but what I'm seeing is that everything you're doing is come from your heart, and you have a real passion for it, and so.
Did I mention he worked for corporate America for 20 years? And he was good at it, but he hated it. But and I love that you say that because he loves us.
Yeah.
Like his heart is in this.
You love it, and you well thought out about it, and just on every mark, you're hitting it 100%. And that's why you've been successful, and that's why it continues to grow. And I think why everybody in the valley is talking about it, and why everybody loves the beer, because you're not just on the whim doing it, or you're not doing it for some other, well, we're doing this so that then we can have a chain of restaurants or something like that, that you're brewing beer because you love brewing beer, and you have your own business because you love it, and and you're working hard towards it. But I think that authenticity of your soul really comes through when I'm sitting here listening to you guys. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is because just kind of following along through Sara, how thoughtful you were about your business, and how much attention to detail. And for other people that are thinking about starting a business, and who have shit jobs that they don't like, and are considering, like I was just telling Sarah earlier, I love motorcycles. I'd love to have some kind of motorcycle shop. Right now I can't even fix a bike. But it kind of inspires me that if I was ever going to do that there's a way to do it right, and that you have to have a passion for it. And I said, of all the things I do, I love being on the back of a motorcycle more than making movies and doing podcasts and anything else. I'm like, maybe it's something that I need to reconsider. And I am seeing that it can be done, and if you do it right, you can be successful at it. And I think that's inspiring for all the kids out there that whatever it is that they want to do.
Yeah. I think a lot of people look at, especially like you were saying, the young kids, they look at stuff and they think, oh, I have to pick and choose a career. No, pick and choose what you love to do.
Right.
And then if you want to own a motorcycle shop, but you can't fix a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't own a motorcycle
Right.
shop. How do you own the motorcycle shop? Right?
Yeah.
And have somebody that can fix the
Right,
motorcycle.
right.
So, you need to find that, okay, this is what I love, this is what I love to get into, but I'm not good at maybe this.
Part, right.
This
Find
one
what you
particular
love
part.
to do and learn how to make money out of it.
Right, exactly. Or make a living, be successful.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're not going to be. I like to say we're not going to make millions, but at the same time, I'd love to make millions.
Sure.
Everybody would,
Everybody would.
But I mean, that's not the goal. The goal
That's
is be
not the goal.
successful. If you're successful, the money does itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Success is not measured in money.
Right.
I
I want to
that-
make people happy. I want people to love our beer because that alone is pure success. They will tell their friends. Their friends will tell their friends. And if the money follows, great. But that's not why we got into business. We got into business, to your point, because that's what we're passionate about.
Yeah.
It's what he's done as a hobby
Right.
for 20 years, and now it's his life. He wakes up at 5 in the morning and he goes and brews a batch of beer, and then he fills growlers and crowlers for customers, and he comes home
And that's kind of been a recurring theme on this podcast. Is a lot of people that I've talked to that success is judged more by the ability to have doing something that you're proud of, and that you love, that you're passionate about, and just if you can make enough money to get you through to the next day, and to success. There's of the 5 or 6 parameters of success. Money is definitely, you have to eat, you have to pay the bills, but
that takes care of itself.
It's at the bottom of the list instead of the top,
Yeah.
because certainly I think people could come up with a business plan to make start a company brewing beer where they know that they can sell it off to some distributor and turn it over to the next Sam Adams, and then retire on a beach everywhere and never have to make fucking beer again. But, I mean, I'm sure there's some business models, and I'm sure they're going to struggle because they don't have that passion to make. If the passion is to make money and not to make beer,
right?
That's an uphill battle.
Sure,
it is.
And it doesn't happen by chance.
Yeah.
You have to have the quality, and you have to have the passion, and you have to have the business sense to tie it all together.
Right. I agree.
And that's when our powers combine.
Right.
They're like Captain Planet,
Earth, wind,
fire.
It really is. It's an interesting combination of the three of you, where everybody brings their own
we
thing
do
to the table,
Right.
compliments each other.
When we've been in the basement, we've had arguments,
Sure.
and that's, you joke about my Pew Matrix, but it works because it takes the emotion out.
His dreams.
Oh, I want to learn more about this. Actually,
I will teach you.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Don't worry. I will give you a half-hour lesson.
We in my group that we make the films, we have Desi's the cinematographer. He's the go-to guy. Other guys know about it, but he's the expert. Jeff is kind of the guy that puts it all together, and he's our go-to editor, and he does all of our graphics, and everybody does something that the other people don't, except for me, I think.
But you've got a great team, it sounds like.
We have an excellent
our
team.
skills combined.
Yeah.
You got to surround yourself with good people.
Yeah. With varied skills. Like, know where you're weak at.
Right.
Yeah.
And know where, and bring somebody in like Josh, Josh, we couldn't do this without you. Love you, brother.
Yeah.
But that's the reality, is you need to have those people who balance you.
Sure.
Recognize,
everybody has a weakness.
Right.
Everybody has a
Recognize,
strength.
I'm kick ass at doing this,
I have multiple
But I
weaknesses.
but I suck at
Obviously.
doing
I
this.
know, right?
And that is
And
important.
that will make you successful.
And it's nice to be able to rely on your partners where I don't have to go out and learn about all kinds of equipment because
takes
Desi
the
already
pressure
does
off.
that.
Yep.
And we just added Ron Scott to the team,
Yep.
so he writes and acts. And we didn't
Yeah.
have anybody that was actually a formal actor that knows acting. So, yeah, the same thing. It takes so much more pressure off me because I used to write a lot more. Now I'm like, I have an excellent writer that's working with me. I don't have to worry about
Yep.
too much about writing something.
So now you can focus on what you're good at.
Yeah,
Right.
Just
Like
drinking
it gives
coffee
you
in the
that
corner,
opportunity.
taking credit for everything.
Sound check.
Just
Sound
kidding.
check. No, just kidding.
You think from a business perspective, though, right? It's like, yeah, I know accounting. I took classes in it. He did, but like, screw it. I'm gonna pay like somebody to be
I
my
agree.
accountant. Like, there's certain things where you're like, okay, I would rather like have that peace of mind,
Yeah.
which is what you were just speaking
Yeah.
to. Of I'm gonna let somebody own this,
Yeah.
and that's their job, responsibility, or whatever. But from a business owner perspective, that goes back to what do I know, what do I not know, and what do I need to bridge the gap,
Right.
right? And that's where employees come into play. That's where partnerships come into play. That's where, business relationships, accounting, taxes, that sort of thing come into play.
And the other thing that you guys have going for you, it seems, not only do you have complementary skills, but you have that trust where if you say that you're going to take on that responsibility,
absolutely.
they know that it's done. And that's huge.
Absolutely.
That you can count on each other.
Well, I'm married to him, so if he doesn't do it, he's going to hear about it.
I mean, it's just the three of us. So if somebody drops the ball, like
Yeah.
the chain fails.
Yeah.
So we have to stay tight. We have to be honest. We have to
I'm saying
make
we
sure.
built that early.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to rely on each other because there's stuff about business that I'll never understand that Carolyn does.
Yeah.
And Kevin.
Nor should you have to at this
there's
point,
stuff about
right?
brewing that I'll never understand that Kevin does.
Yeah.
And there's stuff that I understand about ingredients, chemical process, stuff like that no one else gets. So we all have to make sure that we're at the top of our game to make this
Trust. I love that you said that because that's
Yeah.
one of the foundational
Trust
things.
and honesty.
And respect, because you respect each other's
Yeah.
skills. and
Absolutely.
That's huge, too. You guys got it going on so hard.
I can't tell you how many
It's
times
fun.
I'll be like, hey, check this out, and I'll hand him like a whole pamphlet or an article or something. I was like, read this and figure it out because I just don't want to do
It's
it.
so nice to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, and I know that like he'll get into some of it. I'm sure he looks at it and is like, okay, yeah, no. But then there's other stuff he's like, oh yeah, okay, and he'll come back and go, hey, by the way, you gave me that article to read or something, and he'll come back with some sort of piece of information that is like vital to what we do.
Wow.
And it's just like I either don't have time or the patience or I'm not
not in
not
your
as
house.
educated
Yeah.
about stuff like that I just don't
It's funny you say that though because like our marriage and our whole relationship is based on that. Like he's my best friend. Like we.
Who, Josh?
You. But out of every person in the rest of the world, Josh is probably the next person I trust and rely on.
It is Josh.
It is Josh. Josh is the other man.
I knew it.
He's always the other man.
But
Right.
he's been honest and he's made it easy
Yeah.
to build that partnership because he's been honest and vocal and he doesn't like something, he doesn't shy away about it.
Yeah.
But he's been there for us and I can't appreciate him enough.
That's
Because
awesome.
we would not be where we are today if it was not for Josh, if I'm being 100% honest.
Oh shucks, guys.
Yeah, we could.
And it sounds like none of you would be able to do it with one piece of the puzzle missing.
No.
It would nearly be.
No.
It was really kind of. I mean, I don't know what you call it.
Serendipitous. I was just gonna. You said that the other
We all
day.
got together and
Thinking.
did this.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
just worked like. Just worked. It clicked. Everything just fit together
Yeah.
when we
We
really
have
put our
our
heads
moments,
together.
but
Wow,
yeah.
come on.
Right.
Everybody has their moments, but I absolutely agree. Like, we all fit. Like, we know how we work together, and you easily fit into that puzzle. And so, like, in you two, gosh. Some days I don't know how you work together because
Laurel and Hardy. Yes, we are totally.
But all like when I go back to Captain Planet when
Oh,
our
I know.
powers combine, like
Right.
it just works. It clicks. Like we were meant to be friends with
Yeah.
Josh. We were meant to bring him to our house. We were meant to teach him about home brewing. We were meant to open a brewery. Like all in one of our like, we're not overly religious people, Kevin and I, but we also believe things happen for a reason.
Absolutely.
We were meant to meet Josh. Josh is supposed to be part of our life. Sarah is supposed to be part of our life. Like, we are firm believers in that.
Absolutely.
Just the fact that you had just kind of gotten back into it when you met Josh. Had he hit you up months before that, before you got into it, like, well, I'm not really doing anything right now, might have never happened.
Or even later,
he
where
was
he was like, I got this. I don't need you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was into cycling and stuff like that, and I haven't rode a bike to say, for anything.
Yeah.
Like, I would just be uninterested in that. I'm like, oh, you can.
Right? Just wrap your head around that.
Yeah, and what's cool is so yeah, we may have come from different walks of life, but it's funny because like all the background behind it is we love like all the same things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, whether it's beer or guns or food or
Knives
or
or
why,
a whole
why's it all
day
about
of
weapons?
that.
No, but just like everything, like and it's so funny because like there are moments where we'll all get, which is rare because Carolyn works a full-time job and she travels. And so when we are able to all get together, it's funny because I'm like, oh, we haven't done this in a while. We're like, yeah, because usually it turns immediately to like food. And then
food, good drink,
and then good drink,
relaxing, So
Which it is smelling so good outside.
Yeah, for all y'all. After this podcast, we're gonna have the chefs roundtable, and so we got all these chefs that are cooking some amazing food, and it's wafting in here.
There's like ribs and rabbit, and
there's a hard smoker game happening.
Yes, like it just smells amazing in here.
There's bacon wrapped,
Brussels sprouts, and roasted.
It's the most ridiculous group of food you've ever seen, and but yes, I am really happy to see how well you guys are doing, and I think your story is super inspiring. And I know from the first time I had your beer at the Children's Museum at one of those.
Oh my God!
Yes, at the Children's Museum.
And there was such a buzz that night about you guys, and I imagine before you even started the business, people are
I said that
saying,
was one of our before we opened the business events. Yes.
People were probably saying, "When can I buy this?"
Yes. Oh my gosh! Sure. Yes. 2 years before we
hear that a lot.
Yeah.
So before we wrap this up, I just want you guys to say your address and where people can come to the store
and
get your crowlers and your growlers.
Yeah, so we're sort of hidden, but if you go to 2200 Main, which is most people will know that as the Goodwill building, on the back side of it used to be the old Wonder Bread Hostess discount outlet.
Right.
So we are tucked back in there in that parking lot. You'll see an orange door. So we're between Wilson Auto Glass and basically Goodwill.
Okay.
So yeah, we have the orange door there. Our hours are Monday and Tuesday, noon to 4. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, noon to 6. And then Saturday we're open 11 to 4. So yeah, our growler, you can come down and get growlers and crowlers. Our growlers are $5, $15 for the fill. So $20 total. If you have your own growler, we'll fill any of them as long as they're clean, not ceramics. So we won't do any ceramics because we can't check that. Or clay. We'll do stainless, glass, that kind of thing. So, and then we have the 32-ounce crowler cans that we do. So we were the first brewery in the state of West Virginia to have those. The third actual crowler machine, but the first brewery to have those, and they've been very successful. In our success. So.
I thought I saw some in the refrigerator there.
There are
in the refrigerator.
Okay, all right, because I plan on...
We've got options.
I plan on sampling all 4 of them.
Sure.
Good.
Well, guys, anything else you want to add?
No, just thank you for the support.
Oh.
I mean, this town has been phenomenal. From 2 years before we even opened the brewery, people loved us and were asking for us, to when we opened the brewery a year ago, and people have just been, it's just grown. I mean, from 1 to 16, from, people bringing their family and friends. It's been amazing, the level of support we've gotten in this valley.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's well-deserved, and not only do you guys have a great business, and you're making great beer, but you seem like really great people. I mean, I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that really does show through. I think that has to be taken into account for the success of your business. Because if you were shitty people, I think people would
The
know.
beer would
Yeah,
be
you
shit.
can start a business and be a complete dick, and you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
So,
We all know those people.
right?
At least something like beer, where it's close to people's hearts. I think it does shine through.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And if it doesn't, listen to the podcast again, and if you've listened to this far, then I think they understand
You
what
missed
we're talking
something.
about.
Yeah.
And if you listen to this and you didn't get it, well then, GFY.
It's your loss. It's your loss at that point.
Your soul's black.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you, Josh.
Yes.
My brother. I love you. You sexy, sexy man. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Carolyn.
That is
Which is
funny.
now known as Kevin.
That is awesome.
I'm totally going to make a
Bruce,
new
you
brewer
love
shirt.
it.
It's going to say Kevin.
Yeah. I can't stop it. I've been doing it lately. Brian's like, who? I'm like, oh my god. It's Kevin.
Kevin.
We're packaged deals.
Yeah, you really
okay?
are. You get one, you get the other one.
You
That's
do,
right.
pretty much.
So thank you all. I love you all from the bottom of my heart. And I love you, JW.
Thank you,
you
Sarah.
again.
And-
Thank you
and-
again for having Brew Keepers.
And I want to thank you guys also, and I want to thank Sara for hooking this up
Woo-hoo!
and for co-hosting once again. And she's been a great supporter of the podcast, and everybody that listened to this episode, I appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody. The same with me. The High Valley's really supported what I'm doing, and this is a great community that really supports people that are trying to do something new and take a chance. And I love being here, and I couldn't imagine trying to do the things I do anywhere else where I get the love that I have here. And if you go in there and you've heard the podcast, mention it to them,
Yes.
because it's just good for my fragile ego. That people say, yeah, hey man, people said they came in here because they heard your podcast.
JW needs the what up.
I need the what ups. For Sara Fulton and Brew Keepers, thank you all for tuning in. And
Yes.
until the next time, see ya.
Peace.
Peace.
Hush not, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination. Though you may find from time to time complications. Bite your lip and take the trip. Though there may be wet road ahead and you cannot slip, just move on up. For peace you'll find into the steeple of beautiful people where there's only one kind. So hush not, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Move on up and keep on wishing. Remember your dream is your only scheme, so keep on pushing. Take nothing less than the supreme best. Do not obey, rumors people say, but you can pass the test.